Welcome to another edition of Confidently Speaking with DOC. I am your host, David Doc Shirey, author of the book, Rare Confidence, Strategies and Inspiration to Strengthen Your Belief that you can achieve anything. Episode number 24 on tap tonight. And we got former Pitt Panther head coach and quarterback guru Walt Harris in the house. But before we bring Coach on board, just a reminder that this is a participatory program. So be sure to comment, ask questions. We'll get as many of those questions on the air as possible. And if you could share this video, I'd really appreciate it, as that would help to increase the show's reach. Without further ado, let's meet Coach Harris.
Throughout 3.5 decades in coaching, Walt Harris has tutored some of the finest players in the game. Coach has put together an impressive career as a head coach and as an assistant in both the college and the professional ranks. Coach Harris coached in 14 bowl games, 6 as a head coach, and coached 11 NFL first-rounders and 14 NFL quarterbacks. Players such as Larry Fitzgerald and Antonio Bryant at Pitt, Heisman Trophy winner Eddie George at Ohio State, as well as Boomer Esiason with the New York Jets. Coach Harris has had 3 head coaching jobs: the University of Pacific, the University of Pittsburgh, as well as Stanford University. At Pitt, his teams reached bowl games in 6 of his first 8 seasons as coach led an impressive turnaround and was twice named the Big East Coach of the Year. I am thrilled to welcome former Pitt Panther head coach Walt Harris to the program.
Hello, Coach Harris. How are you?
Doc, I'm good. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing great, my man. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show tonight, Coach. And before we get to the football stuff, I just got to ask you, when we chatted a couple days ago, you shared with me that Wednesday was your golf day, and you told me based on how you played, you'd either be in a good mood or a bad mood. So what kind of mood are you in?
If I go by that, I would be in a bad mood way too often. So I'm not much of a golfer, and I was not much today, but I'm in a good mood, and I'm excited to be on the show.
Well, I'm thrilled that you're on the show, as well as I know all the Pitt fans that are watching are also happy to see you again, Coach. And you always look like the guy that never ages. I mean, you look like you're got the aging process in reverse, Coach. You look like you're about 29 out there. So maybe at the end of the show you can share your secret with us.
I picked my parents right.
Coach, as I was doing some research for the show tonight, I was surprised to learn that when you were a toddler, you actually had polio. And I read a quote that you said later in life that it gave you an edge because you realized that you were lucky to walk, and it gave you a reason to train harder and to fight longer. How did that shape your outlook on life?
I think that says it all, really. I was about 3 years old, and then I didn't move for like 6 months. I wasn't paralyzed, but I was so weak from my neck down that I couldn't move. And my mom was a registered nurse, which was wonderful. And she took unbelievable care for me. And I can remember stretching on the kitchen table because the kitchen table was so cold. It didn't have anything on it to keep me warm, but just stretching, trying to keep my legs flexible and all. And it just made me hungrier. And then one day I went to a doctor's office. I was about 6 years old, and I'm sitting in the doctor's office with these other people that were in the waiting room. And one of the little kids that were in there had no eyes. He had sockets, but he had no eyes. And I said, "Mom, why am I here?" And she said, "Well, you had a tough road." And so from then on, I kind of put 2 and 2 together and realized that I was really lucky to have a chance to ride my bike, to have a chance to play sports, to have a chance to walk to class, and et cetera, et cetera. So I try to take advantage of all my opportunities.
Yeah, that's a great story, Coach. It reminds me of the old saying that, if we all threw our problems into a pile and we saw everybody else's problems, we'd be fighting to get ours back, right?
Right. Good. Well said.
I wanted to ask you about Johnny Majors. You know, Coach Majors, Pitt's legendary coach who led them to their most recent national championship in 1976 and who passed away a few months ago. Not only were you on Coach Majors' staff for 5 years in the mid-'80s at Tennessee, but you succeeded his second stint here at Pitt in 1997. So my question to you, Coach, is what was your relationship like with Coach Majors, and what were the major takeaways and the major influence that he had on you?
I love Coach Majors, and he and I had a tremendous working environment. He was the head coach, and some other coaches got sensitive when he would ask him, would question what they're doing or why are they doing it. They got real sensitive and put up a barrier, and I don't think he appreciated it. And as a head coach, you got the right to ask questions of why are we doing this? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? And so I had a tremendous relationship. Plus, he gave me my first chance to be an offensive coordinator. I'd coached 10 years in college on the defensive side of the ball. And I coached at Pacific and at Cal Berkeley, Air Force Academy, and Michigan State, and I was the defensive guy. And so then I went to offense as a quarterback coach at Illinois under a guy named Mike White, who was a great coach, gave me a great opportunity. But Coach Majors gave me my first opportunity to be an offensive coordinator as well as a quarterback coach. And plus, we were at a school, the University of Tennessee, that had a great track team. So we had a lot of speed. You know, we end up having, quite honestly, 6 first-round draft choices at wide receiver during my time there.
Wow.
6.
Wow. You know, I had an opportunity to golf with Coach Majors once in a charity outing. And, man, you talk about a character. He would disappear for like 2 or 3 holes at a time. There was 4 of us, and then he was the 5th, and he had his own cart. And he would disappear, and then he would show back up. But you could tell his personality and his charisma. And I just imagine him in a recruit's house and how parents would probably fall in love with him.
Yeah, Coach Majors, he came in second in the Heisman.
Yeah, I remember that.
He was the single wing tailback for Tennessee. And what really griped him is he lost out to Paul Hornung, who was 2-8 at Notre Dame, and they were undefeated at Tennessee. And he came in second in the Heisman. So he had a lot of personality. Our desk, we had one big table in our meeting room. It was the shape of a T. You know, so all the coaches sat around and every morning when we'd have a staff meeting. But Coach was a great guy, he's a great fundamentalist, and is a tremendous fan. He used to come to town at least once a year. He came more often than that, but at least once a year we'd all go out to dinner. Mary Lynn, his wife, and my wife Barb. So it was really a treat.
Coach, I want to ask you a little bit about the makeup of college football, and I know you spent a couple years at Ohio State immediately before you got to Pitt. And, you know, when fans look at the college football landscape, they see the Ohio States of the world and the Alabamas, and I guess you could throw Clemson and maybe another 1 or 2 in there. But what is it? Is it just money? What is it that us fans can't see that separates those mega successful programs from just about everybody else?
Well, what their situation is, they're always for football. And I think, so what does that mean? That means they got great high school football. You know, we could go, when I recruited there, I could go anywhere in America and get a visit out of a young man. You know, I go to California, I can go to Florida. You know, the awesome fan support, tremendous football tradition, and the university is committed. So when they're winning, they're committed. When they're losing, which isn't very much, they're committed. And it's always that way. And that's why they're one of the greatest programs in America.
Yeah, no question about it. You know, I went to college in Ohio at Ohio University, and my son goes there now, and it always struck me how, unlike anywhere else, Ohio has all those smaller MAC type programs. I don't know, I think they have like 8 or 9 Division I programs in Ohio. But all of those kids, no matter what those schools they go to, they're all Ohio State fans, which certainly is not the case here in Pennsylvania. And we're going to get into that Pitt-Penn State situation here in a couple minutes. But I wanted to ask you about your time at Pitt, Coach, and even your first year. You know, you got to Pitt and you led an impressive turnaround in 1997. The Panthers had only won, I think, 12 games in the 4 years prior to your arrival. You led them to a Liberty Bowl berth that year. You won your first of 2 Big East Coach of the Year awards that year. What was the state of the program when you took over that year, Coach?
Well, a couple good things to explain that. When I was at Ohio State in 1995, we played Pitt at Pitt, and we beat them. I think it was 54-7 or 54-14. Interesting. We did not. That was my first year there. We did not. We had Eddie George won the Heisman, right, that year.
Yeah.
We did not score a rushing touchdown. We scored 6 or 7 touchdowns. They were all by passes, which was, I was just there. That was my second game as a quarterback coach there. So I was very proud of that. Then the next year we played Pitt at Ohio State, and we won 72-0.
I remember that game.
And we returned a punt for a touchdown with only 9 Ohio State players in the game. David Boston, who was a true freshman, returned a punt for a touchdown. And it was 11 Ohio Pitt guys and only 9 Ohio State guys. But, you know, the programs, they're big. They're talking about apples and oranges. You know, it's very different, you know, at that time. I think Pitt had their chance to capitalize with the great job Coach Majors did and Jackie Sherrill, and then they had some problems, whatever it was. Jackie Sherrill ended up leaving. You know, there was just some problems that doesn't happen at Ohio State. That doesn't happen at Alabama. I mean, they're focused on winning.
And I imagine it goes back to that commitment from the top, as you talked about a few minutes ago. And all right, so you get to Pitt, and you know, you spent, 8 years as the head coach at Pitt. You make 6 bowl games. You won 31 of your final 44 games there. How did you go about turning the program around? Because you did it in fairly dramatic fashion.
You know, we did it step by step. You know, it was our first year was one of the most exciting years for me because we had guys on our football team. We had around 20 seniors, and they had a tough road. They averaged 3 wins a year, and Coach Majors is 4 or 5 years there, and you know Coach Majors is in the College Football Hall of Fame.
Sure.
And, so these kids were very hungry, and they were good football players, and we had a quarterback by the name of Pete Gonzalez who shocked everybody. You know, he came in my office during the winter in January when I first got there and said he was quitting football. And I told him, I said, Pete, you can quit because I don't know you or anybody else, but we're starting from ground zero, you know, and whatever the best man will win. And he decided to stick around. Thank God he did, because he did a tremendous job for us, along with all the other seniors. We had a great senior class. Guys that come by name, John Jenkins, Billy West, Salters, the running back. We just had a lot of John Marzok, offensive lineman, Tony, I forget some of their names, you know, right now. But we had a great group, and we ended up going down and playing Southern Miss in the bowl game, and they ended up having 9 guys on their defensive team that made it in the NFL. 9 guys. So
Coach,
that's full.
Was 97 your first year? Was that the year that Pistol Pete, I think, hit a 4th and 17 against West Virginia late in the game?
Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
I remember that game. Now, Coach, you're known as a quarterback guru, and I want to get into that in a couple minutes. But before we get into that, you know, you've coached some incredible football players. Even at Pitt, you coached 2 Biletnikoff winners and Antonio Bryant, pictured here. And you also coached what may go down as one of the best wide receivers to ever play the game. And I want to show a quick clip of Larry Fitzgerald and his time at Pitt.
By Fitzgerald. Oh, mercy. He's done it again.
mean, the way Fitzgerald would contort his body, unlike anything really I've seen. Coach, my questions to you about Larry Fitzgerald are, how did you get him to come to Pitt, and what made Fitzgerald special and different than everybody else?
Brian Deal, who was my recruiting coordinator, recruited Larry from Minneapolis, and he did a great job with him. Larry's is as great a football player he is. He's a greater person, and that makes all the difference in the world. So he's very easy to coach. He's so athletic. His father wrote for a newspaper, and then also did Denny Green, the head coach of Minnesota Vikings. He did his radio show. So Larry got to be a ball boy for the Vikings. They had Chris Carter and they had a couple more outstanding receivers. So Larry got a chance to see it live and in color with some of the great ones of all time. Chris Carter's is probably one right next to Larry as having the greatest hands in the history of the NFL. And so, but Larry taught us a lot about what he could do, and then we end up teaching it to the rest of our receivers down the road. He's just phenomenal. He's extremely strong hands. He's fearless. You know, he one of the pictures he had very good reel, by the way. He would jump up and get sandwiched between guys, and he never wavered, never took his eyes off the ball. And he and I are still really close.
That's great. And he seems like the kind of guy that's a friend of the program. You know, I know for a while there, Pitt had trouble kind of connecting with the alumni, kind of like the U always did down in Florida. And it seems like they've gotten back to that. And I've seen Larry around the program quite a bit over the last few years. Yeah,
Coach Narduzzi's done a great job that way. And Larry's done a great job because those guys are really busy. They're being pulled from all different walks of life. And yet he still finds time for being a Pitt Panther. And he's just a great person.
I want to talk a little bit about Pitt, Penn State. Seems to be Pitt fans' number one favorite subject that they love to hate. And I specifically want to talk for a minute about the year 2000. So the year 2000, it would be the last time Pitt and Penn State would play for 16 years. They didn't play again until 2016. The 2000 game was at Three River Stadium because Pitt Stadium had been raised and Heinz Field was being built. And I want to show a clip of Rod Rutherford taking a short pass, 62 yards for a touchdown to win that game.
18-yard pickup. Barlow now 7 carries for 60 yards. R.J. English. Now that's Rutherford making the catch at the 49. Going the wrong way. Makes the big turn at the 45-40. Rutherford at the 30. At the 25-20. Rutherford clears Selling for Pittsburgh.
Of course, Rod would go on to play quarterback as well. And as a Pitt fan, that puts a big smile on my face. Coach, what do you remember about that game?
I remember a lot of things about that game. I remember that play. You know, Rod was going to be a quarterback, and the reason he's going to be a quarterback, initially he wanted to be, but then after I gave him my word that I was going to make sure he had a shot at being a quarterback, because in those days it was a lot for the black athlete. So I was committed to making it happen. But in the meantime, while he wasn't going to be the quarterback, we made him into a wideout. And so on that play, he ran like he was going to run to the flat when he came across in motion, and then he came back across, and we popped it to him. So usually what they're supposed to do is run north and south and get all he can get. So I'm yelling. So when he catches the ball and he starts going sideways, I'm saying, "Oh no, no!" And then all of a sudden I'm yelling, "Go, go!" You know, it was really something. And that was one of the few. I think the only touchdown that we had. We ended up winning, I think 13-0. You know,
yeah, I think
it was a huge win for us, for our program, because we played them 4 years in a row, and each year got better and better, and then finally we got it done.
Yeah, I think the year prior, Penn State was, I think, number 2 in the country, and it was a 1-touchdown game up in Happy Valley, if I remember correctly.
Right.
Coach, Tell me your thoughts on the rivalry. Is this a game that you enjoyed coaching in? Should it be played every year?
Without a doubt, the government of the state of Pennsylvania should make it happen, because they're both somewhat state universities. Penn State is a state university, and they should not control that. That's for the people that pay taxes and keep this state moving, and therefore keep those two universities moving. I think we should have to play every year. I think it's great for the people of Pennsylvania.
I could not agree more. I've been at a bunch of those games from back in the day, and even the recent ones. I was at 2 of them, and the atmosphere was tremendous. And I know when I was a little kid growing up, and correct me if I'm wrong, Coach, but this is even way before you got to Pitt, but back in the 70s and the early 80s, Pitt-Penn State was every bit of Ohio State, Michigan at the time. That's not taking anything away from Ohio State, Michigan, but it had that same kind of vitriol and intensity and tore families apart in a good way.
Yeah, I thought it was around Thanksgiving, because I was living in California,
right?
And I remember that. I remember watching the game, making sure I got a chance to watch the game.
It sure was. It was always the last game of the year. All right, I want to ask you about Jopa. You coached against him 4 straight years from 97 to 2000. You know, what jumps out to you coaching against Joe Paterno, and what kind of relationship did you have with him? Did you have any relationship with him?
I didn't have a big relationship with him by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, they got upset because we wouldn't give them a video of we had a game before they played, and we wouldn't give them the video. And that kind of bothered them. Well, yeah. They didn't have anything to give to us, So anyway, and then I went to a banquet where he got some award, like the Italian American of the Year in downtown Pittsburgh. So anyway, he gets up there and he's talking, accepting the award, and ends up his acceptance speech is all about me. And the reason it was about me was because they had a DB that broke his neck playing against Ohio State. And this was when I was the head coach of Pitt. And so I wrote him a couple letters, hoping that he'd get well. And that really impressed Coach Paterno. So like I said, his acceptance speech was all about what a good guy I was, which I didn't hardly know him. I didn't know if he would say, "Hey, Walt," when we walked by each other,
Right. Was that player's name Talaferro? Adam Talaferro?
Yes, it was.
Okay. All right.
It was.
All right, Coach, I want to switch gears here a little bit, and I want to talk to you a little bit about Pitt and their national identity. Now, a guy as old as I am shouldn't care about logos and uniforms, but you know how Pitt fans are. So you arrive at Pitt in 1997, and Steve Peterson, the athletic director, decides that, Pitt needs a new identity. They hadn't been winning ball games, and they went away from the Tony Dorsett era Pitt script, and there's Ironhead Hayward also with Pitt script. And if you go to the right there's Rod Rutherford and Larry Fitzgerald with the Pittsburgh kind of in the iron cut with the Dino Cat on the helmet. Coach, I guess my question to you is, do coaches care? Do you care about what your team looks like out there? And what did you think about the identity branding issue?
I really didn't spend much time. That wasn't my area. Steve made it real clear what was my area and what was his area. And so I didn't, the only thing I heard was the reason that there wasn't anything bought by people in terms of the script Pitt or whatever Pitt was because they didn't even have it in the stores because it was no market for it, And so I think Steve, I'm not putting words in his mouth, but I think he probably felt like, well, we were so bad before, we got to change everything. We'll change coaches,
right?
We'll change all the other stuff and see what happens.
All right, so Pitt finally gets back to what the fans want, and they have this new updated look on the classic. Everything's a little bit brighter, but it still harkens back to yesteryear, and we've got the script, and I think everybody kind of loves these new uniforms. And then this Saturday, Pitt's going to come out in this costume to kind of pay heritage to the steel industry. And if they had silver pants, they would look like the Raiders out there. Now, I know that recruits love that sort of thing, Coach. What do you think of that look?
You know what? Like I said, I was a football coach. I wasn't in charge of all that stuff. I love what the university has done. Heather Light, the new athletic director, and Coach Narduzzi, I think both of them are doing a tremendous job. And so I love those uniforms. They got. What's nice is the guys that are in those uniforms can play, and that's what really matters. That's what the bottom line is. Ohio State's a great program because they got guys that can play.
No doubt. And I think what I just took away from you, Coach, is nobody will confuse you with Tommy Hilfiger, which is great. So, all right.
I liked it. I'm dressing pretty cool right now. I don't know if you noticed, But,
oh, you are definitely a sharp-dressed guy. There's no doubt about that. Coach, I want to talk to you a little bit about your offensive philosophy because you are absolutely, you have this reputation as an offensive guru. And, there's the West Coast offense. There's the Walt Harris offense. Can you share with our audience what your basic offensive philosophy was?
Okay, I grew up as a defensive coach. And one of the reasons that Woody Hayes said when you throw the ball, three things can happen: an incomplete, an interception, or a penalty, And so, and two of the three are bad.
Right.
So, quite honestly, we end up, when I was at Cal as a linebacker coach, we played against Bill Walsh, who was at Stanford at the time, in the Cal-Stanford game. And we really struggled to stop them. And then when they dumped the ball off, they had a guy like Darren Nelson or Vincent White. They had some guys that could really scoot. And so I became really enamored with that because I knew how hard it was for us to stop it. And so the reason if we were effective every year or had a good quarterback every year is because we coached them with the way that they didn't have to make the throws downfield. As long as people were playing zones against us, we looked downfield to make the throw, but if it wasn't there, we're going to dump it off to a back, and we're going to coach that back to run north and south to get all you can get and have a positive down and distance for the next down and distance, and also keep the offense on the field and the defense off the field. And see, the one reason why Woody and those guys like to run the ball is every down you run it, what's the clock doing?
Moving.
The clock is moving.
Right.
If you throw for 70%, 30% of the time the clock is stopped. And of course, not many people are throwing for 70%.
Right.
So what happens is it stretches the game. The game becomes longer. So it makes it harder. It makes it so your defense is going to be exposed more opportunities for the other team to score. So that's what I came up with, an idea that was very similar to Coach Walsh, and it was very much Coach Walsh's offense as best I could perceive it because I didn't coach with him.
So you loved it when you played against a zone team.
Yeah, and then we love it. We became so good at attacking man to man. The way we threw the fades. I mean, some of those catches by Larry were phenomenal. And nobody was doing that stuff in those days. Plus there was, Larry scored a lot of touchdowns down on the goal line. We would be in two tight ends, two backs, I formation with one receiver. Okay, and I would call a run play or fade. So I would call 22 ice fade. Okay, so everyone on the offensive team is running the isolation play. Okay, quarterback reverse pivot, hand the ball to the tailback, jump over the top. But if they only put one cornerback out there on Larry and not double him, the quarterback took one step and threw the ball to Larry. So we were doing that stuff way back in 2000, 2002.
Coach, we have a question from viewer Vince Sacca, and he wants to know, Coach, was there an effort to get Pitt into the Big Ten when things went south with the Big East?
I don't think the Big Ten wanted Pitt for some reason, so I don't know if there was. I think it worked out pretty well for Pitt with the ACC. I thought the Big East was really a good conference. I don't know why it didn't work. I mean, we're playing West Virginia. They were a very good team. We're playing Boston College. They became a very good team. Virginia Tech, Miami. There were a lot of good football teams.
No doubt about it. All right, let's talk about you and quarterbacks, Coach. You've sent 15 quarterbacks that you've coached in college to the National Football League. You helped Boomer Esiason make the Pro Bowl during your time as quarterback coach with the Jets. What are some of the attributes, Coach, that set apart the great quarterbacks from just the decent quarterbacks?
Well, first of all, they got to throw. They got to have some ability to throw, and they have to have the ability to see. And what I mean by see, I'm not just vision. I mean be able to see how the defense drops out, and to be able to visualize things, and anticipate things. But another characteristic that is so important, they got to be coachable. They got to understand that I'm there to help them to get where they want to go. That I wasn't there to help me get to where I wanted to go. Once they realize that you're in it for them, then the guys who want to be good are easy to coach.
Coach, I wrote a book about confidence, and I'm curious your thoughts on the role that confidence plays in a quarterback's success.
No doubt about it. It's just like golf. Today I played poorly, but I haven't played since last Wednesday. That's too much time in between for my talent level. So the quarterback, by practicing all the time, and part of being a good quarterback coach is being able to challenge the quarterback defensively during practice. So being a defensive coach really helped me make it harder for my quarterback in practice. My goal was to make practice like a game, and Saturday would be, or Sunday, depending upon the day we're playing, would be fun. But during the week is work. We got to work. We got to concentrate. We got to focus. We got to get ready for the weekend. And if you get your guys interested in practicing with a high level of concentration and intensity, he'll be so much better prepared for the game.
Well, that kind of leads me into my next question, Coach. I know you work with some young quarterbacks these days, and if I'm not mistaken, that's you and a young Joe Flacco right there.
It sure is.
What is it that you as a coach can do to help raise the confidence level of a quarterback? And how do you help a quarterback regain that confidence when invariably sometimes it goes away?
The bottom line is it isn't just about everything. It's you got to give him confidence. How do you give him confidence? You make it so he's successful. And when they're starting to be successful, you make it a little harder, but not so hard that it can't be successful. And I know, I remember Rod, Rod went into his redshirt junior year in spring practice, and he did not light it up in spring practice. And after spring practice, I told him, I said, Rod, you didn't do very well this spring. You need to really pick it up, or it could be tough. And Rod struggled because I think he didn't have a lot of football background in the passing game. He was such a great athlete. So, and that fall we brought in a guy by the name of Larry Fitzgerald. So every time Rod threw it up high, Larry would snatch it, and so all of a sudden touchdowns and so it just all fell into place. Rod Rutherford ended up winning 17 or 18 games as a 2-year starter at quarterback.
Coach, I was at the game in Miami as a fan when Miami had an incredible winning streak. I think they had won like 24 straight games coming off a national title. And I think Rod Rutherford was the quarterback, and he threw into the end zone on 4th down to, I think, Yogi Roth.
Doc, you did a great job memorizing everything. The problem was is it was fourth down, and we had like 20 between 25 and 28 seconds left to go in the game, and it was fourth down. And what we did, we ran Larry on that little Rod Rutherford route, ran like he's going to go to the flat and came in underneath. And then we ran Yogi down the middle because they were a big 2-deep team.
Yeah.
And I didn't do a good enough job of getting Rod to understand, because so Rod went to Yogi, and Yogi's not Larry. Larry would not have caught the ball, and we would have got a 1st and 10. We would not have gotten a touchdown, but we would have been closer to the goal line, and we'd have 2 or 3 more downs in the next 24 seconds. And I didn't do a good enough job of coaching Rod to be a little more patient. And he threw it to Yogi, and it just came off the top of his fingers, couldn't jump up and make the play. Of course, Yogi, Yogi's a big success. He's with the Elite 11 now. Have you ever heard of them, Elite 11 quarterbacks?
Yeah.
So Yogi's really done good. He ended up coaching quarterbacks at USC for Pete Carroll. So he's rewrites books, and he's an announcer for the Pac-12. Color guy on for the Pac-10, Pac-12 football game. So he's really done extremely well. But that's on me. I didn't do a good enough job.
Yeah, I have relatives in Miami, and I happened to be down there on business, and I was hanging with my relatives, and you guys happened to be playing them, so we went to the game. And if I'm not mistaken, that was still at the Orange Bowl, even though Joe Robbie or whatever the Dolphins called their stadium that week had already been built. The Miami Hurricanes still played at the Orange Bowl at the time, and I remember the crowd was just in a state of shock. The other thing I remember about that game, people give Pitt the business for their attendance. Miami didn't sell out. Any of these schools that are in big cities, even USC didn't sell out. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. But, Coach, we have a question from you, and I know you and I chatted before the show about this young man. Brian Bennett wants to know if you're familiar with and if you have a take on Phil Jerkovic. Jerkovic.
Yes. Yeah, I'm so excited for Philip, man. I think it's so great what's happened to him. I think the Notre Dame experience was a great school to go to, but it wasn't really for him. I'm not sure that it was a great mix with him and some of the guys that he worked with in terms of staff. But, he went up to Boston College, and in his opening game, they beat Duke, who was a 2 or 3 touchdown favorite. They beat him 23-6 or something. He threw for over 300 yards. I think he's going to be a tremendous college quarterback.
I could not agree more. All right, Coach, we have a question from your friend Bob Johnson. And Bob wants to know.
Hey, Bobby.
When you see an offensive coordinator or the head coach screaming at the quarterback coming off the field after a bad series, are those good times? Are those times good for the psyche of a quarterback?
No, it isn't. And that's one thing you have to remember. And that's a very difficult part about being a coach. You can't just let it all hang out there. I think you gotta, I used to want to wait until they had a little time to sit on the sidelines, and I would talk to them, and that gave me a little time to collect myself too, and I don't think that does good for anybody.
Coach, I want to ask you a couple questions about the current state of college football. And I guess the first question that's on all of our minds is the virus and how it really has shaken up the football world. I know that from what I know about football coaches are basically creatures of habit and love routine. And with the virus and with protocols, how does that change a coach's routine, and how does a coach handle that?
Well, the coach is handling it by what he's told that he can do. They're given a litany of things that they can and cannot do. So he's pretty much governed by them. But a byproduct of this, I think, is really something that's really turning out that's very, very special. Is, when you're in college, and it wasn't in my case. I was different when I was in college. Not be better. I was much more of a reluctant to get out and talk to girls. I wasn't really much of a ladies' man by any stretch. But a lot of guys, at this time, at this age, they want to get out and meet people and have a good time, And so the byproduct of this COVID-19 is the sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice that the football players are having to make in order to stay COVID free. I just think it speaks volumes about the players' commitment to something as trivial in some people's eyes as football. I think it's really
Coach,
special.
do you feel that big-time college football players should be paid?
When I was in that situation, it was not happening in terms of being paid. But if it's for the best to help the players, and if it can keep the college football game going and still give money away to the players who are so well deserving because of all the hard work that they do, I just think it's the way things have changed and advance and move along, So it's probably a good thing. It's because it's just a matter of time before that happens.
I want to get your take on scheduling a little bit, because I know as a fan, when I have to pay money to park and to go to the game and spend 4 hours and go see Pitt play Maine, it's not really an exciting afternoon. What is your thoughts on scheduling non-conference Power 5 opponents as opposed to loading up on cupcakes?
Well, I've already talked about it. I think you should play Penn State. I think we should play West Virginia. Minimum every other year, West Virginia. And so those are two outstanding programs. I understand why you want to play a MAC school, because you should be better than a MAC school, and it's not, you like win something, nothing like watching the video of a winning game versus watching the video of a losing game.
Right.
Players just seem to learn a lot more from the winning games than they do the losing games. And bowl games are so dependent on having enough wins, and we were a program that was on the bottom working our way up, so it was good for us to play some of the weaker teams before we got into some of the other teams. Of course, like I said earlier, the Big East had a lot of good football teams.
Sure.
There were a lot of teams that were winning a lot of games. So, so I think it's I think the coach wants to be involved in it, so they make it possible for them to have a winning season and get to a bowl.
Speaking of bowls, Coach, what are your thoughts on the current college football playoff format that's currently at 4 teams? Would you favor going to 8 teams? Do you like the format over the way the BCS used to be run?
I love the bowl games. Why do I love the bowl games? Because as a coach, you usually don't get the Ohio State job. You get the Pitt job, who is down and who needs, they need to build a program, or some other schools that are down, whatever it may be. So coaches get moved around, end up getting the jobs that aren't good jobs. Even they might pay well, but they're not good jobs because they don't have a winning tradition, or they're not winning. And so what you like is if you're able to win and get to a bowl, even if you're 6-5, now you get more practice time. The recruits are more interested in you than if you didn't go to the bowl. And so that's how you build your program. That's how we build ours, and end up my final year at Pitt, which is a whole nother subject. But my final year, we end up going to BCS Bowl, which is the only time we've ever gone, and haven't gone since.
I believe you played Alex Smith in Utah that game, correct?
First guy picked in the draft.
Yeah. Coach, we have a question from Michael Eisen. Mike wants to know, is there a player you really tried to recruit, thought you had, but lost them at the last minute to another school?
Oh, I'm sure there's a bunch of them. It's hard enough to remember right now at 73 the players that I coached versus the players that I didn't get a chance to coach. So that's always a heartbreak. And this, where Pitt is a very difficult recruiting job. And why do I say that? Well, you got Ohio State, you got Michigan, you got Penn State, and you got West Virginia all close to you, within close driving distance somewhat. And it's a very difficult recruiting situation. Plus, I'm not sure that the makeup of the people that live in Pittsburgh is the same kind of people that lived in Pittsburgh during the steel mill days. Those offsprings, those children of those guys that worked the mills, those guys had constitutions. So therefore, their kids probably had constitutions. Kids nowadays, they grew up a little bit different, a little more affluent. Not that they're not good football players, not that they're not determined young men. It's just a different deal.
No doubt about it. Coach, I want to get into something I call quarantine quick takes, where I'm going to ask you a couple questions, rapid fire. Give me some real quick answers. Don't think too much about them. Top of your head. First one, who's the best player you ever coached?
Probably Larry Fitzgerald.
Who's your favorite player that you ever coached?
That's tough. I love Jeff Francis. They play quarterback at Tennessee for me.
Coach, our Pitt Panthers, they're 2-0 right now. They've got nothing but ACC games ahead of them in this strange season with a revamped schedule. So 2-0, it's an 11-game schedule and a bowl game. How many wins does Pitt end up with this year?
I hope they get 11.
All right. Kenny Pickett, Pitt's quarterback. Is he going to play on Sundays?
I love Kenny Pickett. I love his attitude, man. He's one of the toughest quarterbacks I've ever watched. Yes, he'll have a chance to play on Sunday.
I agree, Coach. I like his attitude too. He's one of those guys that, like, if you're going to be in a street fight, you want that kid on your side. He just has that kind of moxie.
No question about it.
Coach, you have been a tremendous guest. I have one last question for you, and that is, I know that you're kind of in retirement, but you still help young football players and especially quarterbacks. Can people get a hold of you if they want some help with a young quarterback?
Sure. Yeah, I would. I love coaching quarterbacks. That keeps me in the game. Keeps me watching football on the weekends. It doesn't make my wife happier, that I'm watching more football. But I like to stay up to date with what's happening, and I love helping, because I think I can help them. I can help make a difference.
I know that you can. I guess my last question for you, Coach, is in your retirement, what does Walt Harris do with all his time?
What does he do? I've become much more interested in politics than ever before. I'm going to be revamping and rehabilitating my golf game here this next week. We also have bought a home in Sarasota, Florida. So we're going to spend quite a bit of the winter down there, which would be very exciting. Growing up in California, it's the winter in Pittsburgh. Also, being at 73, it's a little harder for the joints. So my wife and I are going to be going down there.
Well, Coach, let me tell you, you're the youngest looking 73 I think I ever saw. And I lied. I do have one more question for you. Gale Sayers passed away today. And, everybody knows Gale Sayers from the movie Brian Song, but, some folks that are more your age. Now, I know you coached at Illinois, and he played for the Chicago Bears. Did you know Gale Sayers?
I did not, but I'm a huge 49er fan, and I don't know if you remember, but he had 6 touchdowns against the 49ers. He returned a punt and a kickoff for touchdowns, as well as a couple other either running or catching or both, but I did not get the opportunity to meet Gale Sayers.
Coach, you have been a tremendous guest, and I want you to know I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I know all the Pitt fans who are watching tonight also appreciate it. I am going to put you back in the virtual green room where my virtual non-existent assistant doesn't have any gifts for you, but I'm going to ask you to hold on for a minute for us to chat when the show's over. So don't go anywhere, Coach, okay?
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you. Wow, what a tremendous guest. Coach Walt Harris, a great football coach and a better human being, and I really appreciate Coach coming on the show. Real quick, I want to let you know what we got going on next Wednesday night. Some Things I Think live. Anybody who follows me on Facebook knows about once a month or so I give you a bullet point of some random DOC thoughts. Really no rhyme or reason to the order they come in, but and the beauty of next Wednesday night is it is the day after the first debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, so that should be fun. You guys have been a great audience again tonight. I appreciate you tuning in. Watch that debate Tuesday night so we can have a great show and talk about it next Wednesday. Peace.